Why do I struggle with my faith? I first would like to really commend you for being honest. There's so many Christians who just can't admit that there are faith struggles. But I mean, even think about the idea of faith and the concept of faith. It means we are believing something. It certainly is a reasonable faith. But if there were no struggles at all, would it be faith at all? So I think it's a good thing. It's a fair thing. It's an honest thing. The great saints of the past have struggled with their faith. Martin Luther struggled with his faith deeply and wondered about his personal relationship with God. And when I think about the whole issue of why we may struggle with our faith, I think about the smaller story and the larger story. The smaller story is what we experience today, every day, day by day on earth. As we experience the horrible experiences that we go through, whether it's suffering, losing a job, being criticized, anything from major illnesses to minor relational conflicts. That's the smaller story. And Satan wants to get into the smaller story and say that's all there is. A friend of mine once said it this way, that when our life stinks, our perspective shrinks. And just think about that. Life stinks, the smaller story gets bad, and our perspective shrinks, and we can no longer see the larger story. What's the larger story? It's God's eternal story. It's his story of hope. It's his story of victory. I like to think about it this way. Years ago, when the Chicago Bulls were in their first championship series with the Lakers, and you have to understand, as a Chicago fan, I've seen the teams lose time after time when you thought they'd finally win it. And I taped the final game. And I didn't want anybody, normally people don't want anybody to tell them the end, but I did something different. I fast-forwarded to the end of that game. And I watched the end. I saw that the Bulls won the championship. I rewound the tape. I watched the entire game. When the Bulls were down by 17 in the third quarter, I was as relaxed as could be. You know why? Because I knew the end of the story. That's the larger story. You and I have read the end of the story, Revelation 22. We win in the end. And so it's a normal thing to struggle with our faith when we see the horrible things that can happen in this life. But we can't only look at the smaller story. We have to look at the larger story, the eternal story, that all will be well in the end because we serve a God of grace who's infinitely powerful.